And it's recording. Hello, guys. I know we just had a chat, but how's everybody?
Doing great.
All right.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time you guys have been on here. So Xtina, and we also have Jerome. I use your real name. I don't know if you guys want me to use something else. I could obviously bleep it out.
You're fine.
It's all right.
But yeah, today we're here to talk about Asian American hate crimes. It's a different mood than what we were just talking about. So hopefully we can try to carry that cheerful energy as we're talking about the crimes that are going on right now. It's yeah, so it sucks. I guess we start off saying something like that. It's been going on for a long time. Obviously, the pandemic has made things a lot worse, and I would say it sucks. What are you guys' thoughts on these hate crimes that's going on?
I guess as a person who identifies under the community as under AAPI, I'm Filipino American. It really does hit home a lot more as of lately, especially when I see people that look like me, who especially ones like that I can see as my lola, and which is my grandmother in Tagalog. It just have such a heavy heart seeing this and being posted all the time. And just all of last year, I was really heavily focused with Black Lives Matter, and I've always knew of things happening with the API community, but I think it just definitely became more of a microscope the last year. And I thought it's because it's the course of the pandemic, and a lot has to do with with government not really being vocal about certain things that were said about the cause of the virus, and that kind of just amplified what people's feelings were just solely to that one community. And those are my initial reactions, and it's very hard to decompress, I guess, take apart sometimes, because I feel like I'm still processing it.
Yeah, I absolutely echo what Jerome has said. It's absolutely horrific.
Radiation in space.
Sorry, that's my Alexa that just turned on. I'm like, Echo. Actually, we call it Echo.
So Echo, what do you have to say about this?
A lot, clearly. Oh my god.
Echo, play hate crimes.
So, thank God my headphones are in, otherwise it would respond to everything that you are saying. No, but I mean, it's really interesting to me because I don't identify as, Asian American, but I am, so I have my own sort of like racial backgrounds. I'm half Black, half Mexican. What I've sort of seen, just even since my youth, like it's, sort of like attacks on the Asian American community has always been sort of like undercover, things that people sort of like slide in as jokes, and it comes from everyone. And it's just been, I think, of course, over the last couple of years, just been a ramp up in general. Whereas like, hate crimes against African Americans are, plainly seen, video recorded almost all the time now. Yeah. And with Mexicans, again, similarly, like it happens in joke form, but I feel like it was a little bit louder. Whereas with Asian Americans, like it's always more of a sort of like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of joke. Mm-hmm. And whereas the other ones are far more explicit. And then in this last year, it's just been like, everything else has sort of like been pushed to the back burner, and all of the sort of hate and vitriol that was sort of like spread out amongst various ethnicities was just lambasted onto just the Asian community, like from my purview. And it's really, it's so, again, like I said, horrific and absolutely horrible. And really, to Jerome's point, like, I feel like we're still processing a lot of it, that there isn't a way to just sort of like methodically and systemically like be able to sort of like understand how we got here, especially in such a short amount of time. Where like, because really, when you're looking at just how this last year has ramped up, like I've never sort of witnessed anything like escalate in the way that it has like this. So
I feel like a lot of these hate crimes have been going around for a while. It's just
Yes.
It's just like a lot of them doesn't get reported. This one thing, and the thing too, which I kind of want to touch upon, is Asian American identity. And when it comes to like Black Lives Matter, everybody's kind of unified because you're black, you're black. Obviously, you have places where you come from, but you have most Black people who have been in here for a certain amount of generations.
Yeah.
They're Americans. Their roots are Americans. And we talk about Hispanics, they're unified as well. A lot of them do have roots in America where they have been here for more than 2 generations or so. And they speak the same language. They have some sort of understanding, like.
But that's about it. That's the only thing.
I'm not saying
they have in common. It's just linked. And I think, I'm understanding where you're going, like, to your point, Asian Americans don't have a unifying language, right?
We're no monoliths.
No, I mean, Latinos aren't either.
I agree too. I think every culture group is too. But I think
the one thing you can say that does unify Latinos is if they do share Spanish, right? That is sort of the one place where they can come together, right? That they can sort of meet with one another. Whereas the Asian American community doesn't have that same through line. They don't have that same.
I agree. And to go kind of piggyback on both of what you were saying, I think Asian Pacific Islander, but also has its own identity also within that itself. But also being Asian American, I think also is very different. For some of us actually were not born. Our first generation were born here, and growing up, my parents have always told me to try to assimilate as quickly as possible. They try to limit as much of speaking Tagalog to me around other people, and they've always asked me to try to speak to them in English so they can feel like they're I guess again assimilating. And it's such a very Asian American feel to feel like they have to kind of submit their identity away or and that's why people like us, Asian Americans, first generation, we have kind of this identity crisis for to kind of associate ourselves with being Asian American or being Asian. On top of that, within the Asian umbrella, there's a lot of us, like what Eric was kind of alluding to, that we have such diverse backgrounds in the Asian community. Being Southeast Asian as opposed to being East Asian. And for me personally, Filipino Americans Filipinos tend to be a little more on a dark complexion of their skin, and regional wise being how Philippines have been in the past, they've been colonized by multiple countries. So in itself, being a Filipino is already an identity crisis. We have and so I feel all that meshed together and saying, and on top of that Asian identity of being, being quiet about everything. And that's the reason why growing up, we were taught to not say things or to not approach when someone says something bad, just kind of look down, do your work, do a good job. That was my dad's teaching to me all this. As long as it's good grades, doesn't matter what's going to happen to you. Your opportunities are going to open for you, because as long as you do that, that was my sole focus growing up. That's what we had to do, and I think that's what that. I know it's an overarching theme. I'll probably get into later about the model minority, and that's always been so troublesome for us. And it's just for me personally, I grew up with it. Maybe not I can compare it to some of the stuff that happened to our Black folks or that community. But I had my fair share of stuff that's been said to me about my identity, called chink or what are you, and stuff like that. But it was more okay, what can I do to just go around that? I was kind of always taught to feel that what that vision is doesn't matter, because as long as you're gonna work hard, you're gonna get where you want to be.
Like the ends justifies the means, right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, no, and something you said actually, Jerome, that I find a little bit interesting is that, to your point, even when you're looking, I mean, I guess when you're looking at any sort of ethnic group, there is a level of colorism involved as well.
Yeah.
And something that I actually started thinking about a little bit more recently is that most of the public attacks that I've been seeing sort of go viral on the internet have particularly been against the lighter skinned Asian groups. And I always thought, I don't know if there's something there, like, because there is such, again, to your point, a huge widespread, level of what is the word? Like, we're just like melanin involved, and for whatever reason, the ones that go viral, and I think it's the ones that probably are just like hitting people in a certain place, that's what's making them go viral in a sense, is that it is sort of seeing lighter skinned Asians being attacked so terribly and horribly. And I don't know if part
That's
of
a good
that
point, though.
In the video with ABC News with Daniel Wu and Kamau Bell his last name.
Yeah.
He does the KKK thing, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, obviously KKK is not hilarious, but him being at it's crazy to see this African American guy at a cross burning with no hood on. He's just standing there watching a cross burn. It is nuts. But
on how they open up to him, like, so, like, that to me is the part that's a little bit, I'm like, they feel completely at home and comfortable and at ease with this,
Agreed, yeah.
really dark skinned black man, and let him in as well. I'm sorry, continue. Didn't mean to.
I think it was in his show where he talked about how some of these people who are in the Klan, they just wanted to belong to something, and I think one of the reformed Klan members was saying that if anybody would have approached him and invited him to a community, he would have joined. But it turned out the first person to open his doors were, racist. But But anyways, in this video, they talked about how we have to differentiate between hate crimes and people taking advantage or taking the opportunity to commit crimes onto somebody.
That's true.
And that's the thing too. I think we have to come down and realize or differentiate where are these hate crimes or are these people just taking the opportunity to commit these crimes?
It can be both, right? Like they're not mutually exclusive.
Agreed. I think a little bit of both. Sometimes the intent is not that, but I did want to hit on was that I think the reason why it's to a certain group of people, it's also because there's that language barrier. So there's that feel of the need that I don't feel like I'm going to have any repercussions because I don't understand what they're saying. How is anyone going to interpret what they're saying? And we don't have people in the community that can translate that for to whatever language that may be. If it was I think that's why, and then I think it's been targeting those type of people. And to go back on what Xtina talked about, the lighter skin Asian folks, I think it's because it's more targeting, I think, more of East Asians as of lately. And I think as of lately, it's because of coronavirus. So I think, well, maybe not solely, but I think, and then that's what kind of people self-identify, and a lot of, maybe some racist folks or people who think that all Asian people look like, that's that type of ideal that they look for, right? Those traits that they like. Person doesn't speak English well, has certain traits, has a lighter complexion. I'm going to target this group.
Well, people who can't fight back, obviously.
Agreed. Yeah. Who seems, I guess, quote unquote, helpless, or and that's the reason why it's been targeting older people, right?
I think the reason why we see a lot more lighter skin or East Asian people being attacked, especially in Chinatown and stuff, is because they're being attacked within their own community.
Yes.
Like if I was Chinese and I was walking up Chinatown, I know my neighbors. I wouldn't think twice about getting attacked.
Yeah, definitely.
And your guards are down, and these crimes opportunity happens, and you see a lot of these people being attacked because they're just being attacked within their community. It's like you wouldn't want to attack somebody who is bigger and has more tattoos.
Or who looks like they would fight back.
Yeah,
basically.
obviously.
Yeah.
Like, of all the stories, like, the first story I ever heard about an Asian American being attacked was in I think Sheffield, and the guy was a student from I think Taiwan. They jumped him, it was like it didn't look like he was gonna fight back. Same thing with the guy who got choked out in the subway.
Well, and even to that, the woman who was most recently sort of like attacked that in front of the apartment building in
the Spartan kid?
So that guy, he had literally just gotten out of jail for murdering his mother, right? Like, so when there is a nexus of people who commit these crimes, who have it in them to be able to do it in the first place.
That capacity, right? Or,
exactly. So they're going to do it, but he very explicitly said, you don't belong here, to this.
That's definitely a hate crime, yeah.
And so
definitely,
and this is what I'm saying. Like both of these things can coexist at the same time. Like it's a Venn diagram, right?
Agreed.
Like, racist action to like just wanting to
hurt people,
create chaos, hurt people, all of that jazz. So it's a Venn diagram of issues here. Like they're not, it doesn't have to just be one or the other.
Because I feel like in the beginning of the pandemic last year, some of the hate crimes were obviously hate crimes because of the China virus. But then I saw more of the crimes being committed just because it was like trendy. Like a lot of the stuff that happened in Canada or in Florida, people did it for TikTok.
I mean, I guess to what you're saying, like Eric, it could be that, it morphed into a racial issue recently, but I think you have to take into account the rhetoric and the attitude that, have sort of been publicly made by people in power, like political positions of power, like giving that kind of
they crack the window.
That nod, right? Yeah,
exactly. It's like the go ahead, right? Like it's go ahead and you can.
Yeah,
you can
I won't say anything about it because there's no repercussion. Sounds like it, so I'm gonna keep doing it.
Fuck them, right?
And it started off slow. So like I remember it. I hate to like bring this up because it's so silly, but like on The View, like a million years ago, Meghan McCain, initially said she didn't care that people were calling it the China virus, right? She's like, I don't care. Like, if people can call it whatever they want to call it.
China. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, and so she, she now has like totally made a 180 and is like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I, shouldn't have done that, because what she did and what many other people were doing, particularly white people were doing, is they were giving that hate a space to live and a space to grow, where it's the microaggressions, right? Like where it's just a little bit at a time, and then by the time it grows so big that people are literally murdering, people in the streets or at Asian spas or wherever. Like it really makes it only seems like the likely progression, right?
Yeah, like a build up,
so it's like, but giving it just that little bit of space in the open to publicly say, like, okay, it's like there's good people on both sides, right? Like
it's a slippery slope.
Yeah,
it's a slippery slope.
So I'm with you. It definitely, we're looking at it through that lens, that racial lens now, but it was definitely the seed was planted like long ago. And the sunlight was finally able to hit this year with the coronavirus.
I think a lot of it is kind of age-old, kind of generational things that kind of transpired and passed down for generations. I did a little research, and I think I may be wrong, but I was reading that one of the first immigration bans that were listed in the U.S. was against Asia in the 1800s.
Chinese Exclusion Act?
Chinese Exclusion Act, yeah. So, and that was specifically targeted to, I guess, the Chinese Americans and East Asians. So that kind of already when you think about it, that kind of transpired throughout the years. But so it just and I did also do a little bit of research. Yeah, when slavery was banned, and it was actually Asian people that took over the jobs that that slaves used to have for cheaper labor. So that in itself, you know, kind of had that embedded into the whole generation things of like how we have been oppressed. And I feel that's been, you know, granted that we don't have slaves anymore, and these people are not paying for cheap labor anymore. But these age-old type of mentality has not changed, and we've never fully addressed it. And it starts with this little comment here and there, and it just kind of like what you know saying that's micro progress into something that's unmanageable that you have to talk about.
Yeah. Also, I wanna plug something. The show Warrior on it was on Skinemax for a while, but now it's on HBO Max.
It's on HBO Max now.
Yeah, it's I'm not telling anybody to subscribe to HBO Max.
Me neither. I would never.
Solo movie, but if you want a quick crash course on like Asians or Chinese Americans working in San Francisco fighting against Irish immigrants for jobs, you should watch the show. It's actually pretty good. It's good historical fiction. It's based on the stories of Bruce Lee, and the fight scenes are really awesome. You can also see boobs and penises for equality. So
I love that.
For equality.
Thank you.
But no, that show is actually really good. It touches on that subject where Chinese Americans were used as a weapon of the government against other minorities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that season 2, I haven't finished season 2 yet because I've been super busy, but they're basically touching on the Chinese Exclusion Act. So they're about to touch upon that. Yeah, I mean, for a long time, like Asian Americans were used as a weapon from the powers that be to basically put other color groups in their place.
To divide them. Yes.
It's always been like a benchmark.
It's almost been like we've been giving Chinese people or East Asians that bone to like, hey, we'll give you this. You can have some successes, but you'll never be at a certain point, right? And
there's still a ceiling.
Correct. There's still ceiling.
Bamboo ceiling.
Yeah, but you may be seen a little bit higher than maybe some black folks, so that kind of already transpired to some. I think we'll probably talk about later, right? Of why there's a division between people of color, because there is this kind of like, what about me type of thing, right? Like I want it for myself.
Yeah, we really saw that mentality explode during the Black Lives Matter, right?
Yes.
A lot of Asian Americans who have experienced a lot of hate crimes have had the "what about me" mentality.
Yeah. Definitely.
Obviously, a lot of Southeast Asians, we are kind of some of us are contained within our own communities, even in Central Valley. Of course, you see like interracial relationships and stuff, and people work with other people's races. But then there's always the community first, because there's not a lot of us. Asian Americans only they make less than what was it like 19 million people in America, and because of that, we always have this mentality where community comes first because there's not a lot of us, and during this time I see rhetoric where people are talking about, oh, like my parents own shops, we've been robbed by like black people. We've been this and that by Mexican people, so it creates that us versus them mentality.
That divide. And I think a lot of it is because a lot of those Asian people that have experienced that kind of you focus on that and kind of generalize a whole general population and say this is the reason why A, B, and C I don't like about the black. And that's kind of built up. And of course, we all know the LA riots, and that kind of really like fed into why there's such a divide. And I think it comes with stemming everything, which from when white folks were trying to get trying to divide, trying to target the African American. They will and kind of build up this model minority where we're going to give the bone to Asian Americans that they have some type of success, and say that they're going to be maybe a few that will make it big, right? And then they're gonna try to fold that into the Asian community, saying that if you don't say anything and work really hard, you'll get there, because there's only this certain amount of people that made it. So we have examples that they're going to use, right? Okay, you can use those people to really drive that why. If you keep working hard, then you'll have success, but not realizing that recipe of success is not the same for everybody. And I think that's what they're creating the divide is, because they feel that some Asian Americans feel like that those privileges are necessarily not enough, and they kind of compare it to the Black community of why they seem to have more of the visibility, I guess. And because Asian Americans have never said anything.
Well, it also depends like how dark you are as an Asian, right?
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah,
it goes back to the colorism thing, right? Where like there is this sort of advantage and disadvantage to being sort of the lighter skinned minority for the most part. Obviously, like if you're not talking about South Asians, but like they are the lighter end of the spectrum in a lot of cases, and so when you look at African Americans, when you look at Latinos, look at Native Americans, they just are a lot darker, and you can spot it easily. Like it's like when you put them all in a lineup, who gets the shit end of the stick because of that colorism that exists even within, not just externally, but also internally within these communities as well.
Correct.
Because that is that's something that was a conversation that also happened quite frequently on my mom's side of the family when. Because me and my siblings we all have various levels of melanin in just the three of us.
Yeah.
And, when my sister, initially got married a white guy, the pervasive feeling was that she's improving, the race, right? She's improving because of
improving the class again.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
diluting the blood.
Exactly. And it's just so bizarre to me, that, you love these people as your family, but you can still have these
these little
framed prejudices, and it still sneaks its way out in
agreed.
Horrible.
I can totally agree with you. Growing up, my mom always say, don't stay outside too much because you'll get dark. No one's gonna love you. It's straight up just flat out like that, and it really roots down to also with your darker skin in the Asian community, it tends to mean that you're out in the fields more, you're doing hard labor,
you're poor,
and then you're poor, and all roots us up to colonialism because and that's the reason why there's this divide of lighter and darker skin within our own communities, because these communities were colonized by East European, in the Philippines it was East European, even East Asian, and as well as the Americans. And it's kind of implanted seeds into the whole community in itself, even though the countries like the Philippines have been independent for so long, but they've kind of embedded these traits into culturally hey, lighter skin means you're better, darker skin means that you're poor and you're going to be seen as not as less than.
Well, do you think that I think that translates to all communities,
definitely, not just solely just to our community. It's
it's in the Black community, it's in the
it's all roots to colonialism because of white supremacy
and white supremacy. Right. I think when you're looking at it from a classist or socioeconomic position, there's also you always have to count farmers, right? Which is predominantly people of color who are getting paid pennies on the dollar for their actual hard labor. It goes back to what you were saying earlier, Eric, about how there are people who are what about me? Why are these other groups getting these advantages and I'm not included in that? And that's, I think, sort of one of the biggest barriers that, we still haven't been able, because that right there is probably one of the more unifying forces, is that when you look at it from a socioeconomic perspective, we're all on the bottom, all of us, and including there are white people down here with us too, especially in poor rural areas, but yet there is that, because of white supremacy, they still think that they're above, everybody who's down in the trenches with them.
Well, unless really pretty, and then you pretty much breaks all those barriers, right?
Oh, that's true.
But Yeah, going back to what we're talking about with the whole like what about me mentality. It's when the Black Lives Matter thing exploded in America during the George Floyd incident. Is that trial? Is it over?
No, it's still
still going.
Yeah. So when that happened, like obviously a lot of Asian Americans have the mentality, "What about me?" And it stems from like, why are you guys celebrating this group of people who have committed all these crimes on me and my brothers and sisters? And notably, there's just they feel as if they've been, pushed to the side, like their cause doesn't matter, or their strife or their pain doesn't matter, because now we're trying to give these people who wronged them an avenue to become a better person due to their color.
I mean, it's hard for me to talk about the George Floyd stuff just in general, because I mean, I still, even a year later, am still processing all of that, because that was the first time I think I actually watched a man sort of like I've seen videos of Black dudes getting shot by the cops, like it's, a fucking Coke commercial, because they happen happening so frequently.
They happen so often, yeah.
But seeing a man sort of literally over the course of 9.5 minutes, slowly die. That was, I think it's something that I kind of try to block out of my brain. It's
horrifying. Yeah.
But like, I mean, and it's actually, I don't know if it's ironic or if it's fitting that like this trial is going on as the, Asian community attacks have escalated in the way that they have. It's almost this weird, crazy synergy, because you would think that would also be an opportunity for people to realize like, yo, the same shit is happening to both of these groups in different ways. Like one, like, yes, is systemic sort of racism by an authority group on to, a group of people that has been happening for, over 100 years, whereas what's been happening to the Asian community is like, again, like a slower burn. Slower burn that, but it's still, it's the same result, right? Like in the end is that people are dying, and, for no other reason right now than the color of their skin or the makeup of their ethnicity. It's just,
but I also think like with the Asian side, how there are people saying fuck the blacks. There's also Black people saying fuck the Asians. Like
definitely both sides.
Both sides. In one of the interviews, with the LA riots, one of the Black community members basically saying, we don't care about the Koreans. They come into our community, they open up stores, raise prices, and a couple of other like businesses, Korean businesses too, have been attacked because we're Asians. So I think both sides have those small percentage of people saying, fuck them, because they have wronged me, I don't care about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That definitely exists. I mean,
it definitely exists. I think it's tough, because I think it comes with a lot of distress within the communities. And with marginalized communities, right, their focus is on themselves for so long that, like, especially for the Asian community, that since they have not been full or about things that they thought the only people that can help them is themselves, right? So there's definitely some people I know that are in my life that have that mentality that there's no one to help you but yourself, and so that in itself, I feel like, is an attack on other communities, that you feel like you're gonna have to make yourself better then, right? So it's tough, because I think by doing that, you forget that all this stems from one thing, right? Kind of white supremacy, and if you don't see that bigger picture, they're gonna keep always saying this "what about me" type of thing, or like, what about the, like, especially when they try to generalize the whole community based off one experience, right, or a couple, or whoever it may be, and I don't know, I feel it's a lot of we have to break down within our communities and really try to address that there is racism within people of color.
It's like we have to have these conversations. Like
we have to. I think so. Like, and say what are the reasons why, you know, what are our struggles that unite us. I think that's what we have to start talking about, you know, like what we can do, that we have to realize that when people of color, when marginalized community is, you know, struggling, I think we have to I guess kind of rally together and realize that their struggles are ours too, that we gotta, you know, they are, if they're paving a way for all of us to feel that there's a sense of quality, and there's a movement that's gonna make us feel like that we're all on the table.
Like this, I think this also ties into the whole model minority thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Where it's being, where like our race or color is being weaponized by whoever wants to use it. You know? Is it used? Is it could be weaponized by a certain community? It could be weaponized by powers that be, whoever controls it. Like in the notes I had, a woman wrote her discourse on the affirmative action and how, and she grouped Chinese people in the same leagues as white people, and how Chinese people would use affirmative action as a means to not subjugate, but as a means to belittle the African American community. You know, she basically says that it makes them feel like they are a class above due to their color and position in colleges, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, there was, I mean, I don't know if you saw this in any of your research, but there was an Asian American, I think it was a woman, who sued Harvard over affirmative action because she believed that that because they were, choosing to sort of include more African American and Latino groups, and she as an Asian person was being discriminated against because they already had such a large population of Asian people already attending Harvard. And she thought she was getting discriminated against because her qualifications were supposedly higher than these other minority groups that were being added. I mean, but that exact argument is one that white people use, right?
Yes.
Of why affirmative action shouldn't, be enacted across these schools.
What about me, right? That same mentality again.
I mean, and for the record, she lost. Like, she actually lost the lawsuit because it was basically like Harvard was able to sort of like show their receipts. Right? They're private, but they were also able to sort of show the receipts that it wasn't that, they weren't accepting people who were qualified. Like, they weren't accepting other races that weren't qualified, right? Like, because they are, they were able to sort of, back up their shit and say, like, no. Like, all of these people were qualified. They just happen to also be people of color,
Yeah, and these barriers is what fosters these kind of thought, these kind of arguments. Because of these kind of walls they're going to put up, you have to come up with a reason why, and I guess for her actually that's it.
Yeah. Well, and I have to let me also amend my statement. They were people of color, but like underrepresented groups, like of people of color. Because yes, while there was already like, a pretty deep rooted Asian community there were like Black community, Latino communities were not represented in this. And that's why they made a point of trying to include more of them and accept more of them. Mm. But it's a white power structure that was able to sort of like give that argument in the first place.
And I think it's all rooted to why, for equality, do I have to sacrifice my own spot for someone else?
Mm-hmm. Right? What about me?
Yeah, what about me?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, unless fucking Aunt Becky wants to take me on, dude.
I have a question for you guys. How do you guys feel South Asians fit into this picture, right? Because there obviously is a very large, Indian population that is also considered part of the AAPI community.
Yeah, which I think
they're Asians.
They're Asians, but I think they also get very excluded a lot too, as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when people traditionally think of Asian, right, or Asian American, like you typically think of Eastern Asian, right? Like that's
Chinese, Koreans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, how do you guys feel that they fit sort of into this larger conversation of what's happening within the AAPI community?
Welcome. More about me, man.
Well, I think you just put it into, for like, are Filipinos considered Asian, you know, like
they are considered Asian. I think I think for Filipinos, they, at least for my own experience, I can only speak of that. That we've gotten to such a more of like trying to fitting in to American society that we feel like we're American already. At least my family is trying to embed that into our teachings of like, you gotta work hard and stuff like that, and only speak English to certain people, stuff like that. You've made yourself American. I think with some Southeast Asians, or at least for Filipinos, they feel they're okay in a way because they feel like they've become American, right? Or they kind of taken on the American identity, and there is a divide. I know there's even racism within with Filipinos and some people too, because so
the history, man.
Yeah, there's a long history of that too. Yeah, so I feel like I hear this a lot talked in my family, or at least my family. They feel like, what about us? Even during the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff like that. So even when all this stuff has been talking about Asian Americans and about hate, and now there's finally someone that we can identify, like that Filipino grandmother, and now I feel there's everyone kind of like just gravitating to that, because it's been tough for Filipinos, I feel, to equate to a lot of stuff. It's because they still felt like they were excluded from the conversation. What about you, Eric? How does that fit into how you identify yourself?
This channel is called Sorryasianparents because this is the question I've always wanted to ask. Like, what does it mean to be Asian? What does it mean to be American? What does it mean to be Asian American? Because those three identities are separate within their own, you know? And I kind of feel like I've had a progression of finding out who I am and what that really means, because I've been in different environments. You know, growing up, obviously I grew up in a Laotian household, Laotian, quarter Thai, whatever. And we kind of grew up within that community. And I've kind of seen that community where you're either, you know, quote unquote, good Asian, or you join a gang. It's either or. There was like no in between at that time. There's no in between because the community is kind of like stuck together. And then throughout high school, I've been exposed to other communities and did sports and been around different people. And, you know, I had, I want to say, I had a lot of beliefs where I don't believe in now, because I was doing it, one, to stick it to my friends, and I think I was kind of being a douchebag. I was kind of an idiot. I held a lot of conservative views, and
agreed.
I'm not proud to say this, but one time I gave a presentation in high school on why illegal immigrants shouldn't get driver's license. And I'll look back at it as, fuck, dude. If I was watching me give this presentation, I would jump me at the end of class. Like, I deserve to be punched in the dick for that. But
part of that is also where you grew up. It's not just, you know.
Well, I think a lot of
things that are embedded into you that you thought was correct, or you didn't know any better, right?
Well, yeah, that too. And like, I think growing up in high school, people stereotype a lot of people, and it's easier to live up to that stereotype than it is to be yourself. Because you want to be popular and get bitches, you know, you can't go against the norms. Like, what am I supposed to do? But then
you could have been a nerd like me. Sorry.
Yeah, but high school, I don't regret anything. But then moving to San Francisco, I was exposed to other communities, other groups of Asians. Like, I had never had a Japanese friend until, you know, college. Didn't have a gay friend. I used to think gay people were wrong. It was growing up in a conservative community. And, you know, obviously the exposure made me realize like these are just people too. So hopefully that answers the question. Like, I've had this transformation where being allowed or being put in a position where I can communicate or have conversations with people from the other side has helped me grow as a person and how to identify as Asian. Because it's, you know, obviously it's hard. It made me realize that there's no there's no real answer to what being an Asian American is. It's hard to identify, because to me, what being an Asian American is something else. And to touch on back what you were saying about Asian privilege, I didn't feel some of those Asian privileges, like when you talked about what's it like? Affirmative action of it. But like the model minority, you know, like if maybe it was lighter, prettier, I could probably experience some more model minority things, but I didn't, you know. So whenever people have these conversations about like the privileges that model minorities get, it also makes me question, like, what about me? I never had those experiences. And that's where it made me think about the divide between the Asian communities, because, you know, like I said in the beginning, there's no one language that connects all of us together. Some Asians have been here for generations and have American roots, and some of us were first generations where we are just setting roots. So, yeah, I know it's hard, and it's I think it's a conversation we need to have, especially when you talk about racism within the Asian American community, or within Asian itself, because there's a whole lot of history about what happened in Asia. It's and it's not really taught in our schools, because we're not an Asian-centric country. We're a Euro-centric country. So we don't really learn about what happened to Native Americans.
That really contributes to why we have, as Asian Americans, we have an identity crisis, because we don't know about our history. We feel like a part of us has been erased from history, where we only learned this from a white supremacist side of the history, right?
I got lucky that in high school, a lot of the racism that I experienced was through microaggressions, because of the people I hung out with. Also, you know, I was popular, but that's besides the point. The only time I've ever experienced racism outside my group of friends is through gangs. Like, gangs were a huge problem in Visalia, and every time I got called like a gook or a chink on purpose is through gangs, gang violence, because of the Mexican versus Asian gangs. But it wasn't until I think college where I actually experienced a lot of racism. Like, one time, this you know, older black guy called me a gook and a chink on the street. It was in the street, in front of everybody. It was on Hate Street, and I tried to let it bother me, right? But what pissed me off that made me want to fight him, when he said, "I fought in Nam, killed all you zipper heads, and you come here to date white women?" Because I was with my friend Molly at the time, and that's the only reason why he wanted to fight me, right? And I tried to fight him, but then, you know, obviously he stopped, went into play, jacked off. But I don't know, it was because he didn't think I was going to try to hit him or whatnot. But it had, I guess he had the mentality where, like, these Asians aren't going to do shit if I were to try to poke the bear. But he could also be crazy. I don't know.
I think there was probably like a level of, you know, in there, because
I think so too.
PTSD war veteran, I imagine, that they're not to excuse it in any way, because that is not like excusable. But like, you know, the question I have for you is, when that happened to you, did you, like, almost what you were saying earlier, you know, obviously, like, there's a lot of sort of history and racism between the Black and Asian community. When that happened to you, do you then take that and hold it against the entire Black community, or are you only looking at it as, you know, this fucking guy, like,
every day I wake up, I hate him? No, it's obviously, you know, I'm not stupid. I know this guy was crazy. Like, I don't hate Black people. I have a lot of Black friends. Okay. I'm not racist because I have a lot of Black friends.
Don't start the conversation.
That part out.
It was it didn't make me hate Black people because of him. You know, like, even when my parents got robbed by Hispanics or Blacks, it didn't make me hate them, because I realized there's bad people in every community, because everybody's a person. Everybody has their own identity. A person's identity doesn't reflect in the whole community. You know?
And also, even in that, like, the reason why those Black and Mexican gangs robbed your parents' place, it probably had less to do with the fact that you guys were Asians and more to do with the fact that you guys had money, right? Like,
because you own the business.
exactly.
Crimes of opportunity. And
definitely.
And because of like incidents like that, or what happened to me last year at the gym when this Hispanic guy was calling me names, it was just like, it made me understand why some Asian Americans feel hurt when the positive light was being shined on the African American.
Yeah.
You know?
Because they look to those moments where, why they elevating this people where they have been doing this to me, right? And they kind of gravitate to that experience.
Yeah. I just get so frustrated because, like, you know, the whataboutisms are so ingrained in how people perceive what's going on. But I have to I always try and say, like, there is no oppression Olympics, right? Like, no one group gets a gold medal for all of the things that their community has gone through, right? Like, you know, your group had it worse than my group or vice versa. Like, it's all shitty. It all sucks, you know, to what Eric was saying at the very beginning. It's all fucking sucks. And, you know, how do we overcome this and really look at the power structures to blame for this and attack that, you know, in a peaceful way, of course, not physically or violently, you know.
Yeah, how do we tear down systemic racism?
It's the age-old question. But like, because otherwise,
how you feel about the American government, right?
Don't get me
another conversation again,
right? I'll get me on some blacklists, some anti-lists probably. No, but like, because like otherwise, I feel like it ends up being a conversation where you're just almost going in circles, right? It's just sort of like this never-ending loop where, you know, it feels like we're living the same things in a different time. Constantly, history just keeps on repeating itself over and over and over. Like, you know, laws are now being enacted to prevent Black and Brown communities from, you know, Brown and all, from voting in mass. And it's just like, what year is this? Like, what is happening and how is this happening and how do we stop it? And the only way, to your point earlier, that we can do it is to find common ground. And I just don't know, when people are in such pain, how do you find common ground? How do you get there?
It's easier to blame somebody else for the problems that are going on. And I think to what in the ABC interview with Dick Wu and I can't believe the guy's fucking last name again. The comedian guy. But what was his name? Dude, I just said it right now.
Wait.
Bell, yeah, like so what Bell and Wu were saying is like it's we have to be careful to not use these instances and these current movements as a weapon or try to make sure it's not being weaponized in some form of way. And a lot of it too is being weaponized, you know, like people blame Asians for the virus. Or Asians blames Black people for being attacked. You know, these things are being weaponized. Let's be careful.
Agreed. I feel sorry. Eric.
I was saying we have to be careful to not see it in those lights and move away from that kind of conversation.
I did want to add that I feel that's also like a weapon for people who support white supremacy, or not just white supremacy, even like people within the people of color who say, what was I going to get at that why do we keep blaming white people? I hear that also on the other side of the conversation, where why do we have to keep blaming white people? Why can't we just do our job and work hard and do that? Use that recipe to try to become successful and just not ignore all that noise, right? How do we address those folks though? Like, I feel that's also bad in itself too, to feel like it's a single, like, focus on yourself and just work hard. I think that's also not addressing issues, right?
Well, I think because it's not just about, it's too easy to just blame white people, right? You know, it really, really is. And
it really is.
You do also have to take into account, like I mentioned earlier, like the socioeconomic status of, you know, a group of white people, like, is the same as, you know, the socioeconomic status of people of color. And really, ultimately, it's not individuals that are at fault, it's systems, right? It's these systems of power. You know, I hate to get all, you know, feministy by saying, you know, it's these patriarchal systems that really purport white supremacy. That is like, and it sucks to say, like, that's why people are so quick to say, like, oh, you need to stop blaming white people for all of your problems. It's like, I'm not blaming white people.
That's a good point. Yeah,
I'm not blaming white people. I'm blaming these systems, and it just so happens that these systems benefit white people.
Yeah, and we're made by white people.
Yep, they were made by white people. They benefit white people. And like those people are long gone. There's nothing I can.
Yeah, I don't think our forefathers of this country expected this amount of immigration to happen to this country, or to fold where it's such a melting pot that there's these certain groups now that are identified that necessarily these laws don't apply to them. Or it comes with, I think, us really updating. I think maybe that's what you're trying to get at, right, Christina? That we have to get to the point where we have to kind of tear down some of these structures and really rebuild some of that, and really wash away, I guess, I don't know how to phrase that, but we get out of that mentality that this only benefits.
Yeah. And the thing is that I think a lot of groups, including, you know, people considered to be included in the model minority, are scared to lose those systems because they believe they've been built into it, right?
Yeah,
like they believe.
Sorry. Yeah, they benefited from it, right? Like, am I going to lose my social status, right? Again, what about me?
Yeah, like the familiars of vampires, you know, like vampires are gone, then they lose their
again.
But I mean, part of it, again, it comes back to messaging and, you know, reprogramming, right? The reason why, you know, Donald Trump was so popular was because he was able to have a very simple catchphrase that fit on a hat that people were able to sort of like connect with. And it's not easy to explain the historical context of all of the various things happening within not just, you know, the AAPI community, but all of, you know, the surrounding communities of color. Like, it's just, it's so much more complicated. And I don't, you know.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a quote that I highlighted where it talks about how race was used by poor whites as a means to elevate their status in society. You know, like, you may be a rich black guy, but I'm still white and good. There's still spaces that are just for me that are not made for you. And like, until we're able to sort of convince, or not even convince, but just show people that, like, it's a rising tide that lifts all boats, right? So, you know, certain groups getting equality or equity, it's not going to diminish the rights that you feel you already get, right? Like, it's not going to take that away from you. It's just going to, like, sort of spread a little bit more of the love, like, you know. Well, isn't that the idea that most people have when you talk about Asian privileges?
I mean, I don't know. Do you think that the goal is to take away those Asian privileges, or just make those privileges accessible for everyone?
I think it should be the latter.
It should be for everyone, right?
I agree. Yeah, it should be for everyone.
That's what we want, but I think that's what people are scared. Again, what about me? They're scared of losing.
Definitely a good point. It's like a barrier, right? Yeah.
It's like they're like,
they're guarding their stuff. They're like don't take it away from me.
I was about to make a Yu-Gi-Oh! There's this trap card. It's like this trap card. It's this trap card. it's this mirror card where like you try to attack somebody and you flip it over and it's reverse or something, reverse mirrors where the attack reflects back on them.
A negate?
I have no idea.
A negate?
I don't know. It was a trap card. It was like mirror force or some shit.
Oh, I do know. Anyways,
anyways,
go with your
like,
point.
It's like ADHD, right? It's like it was like the trap card, basically. Like that's how I was saying. Like color was a means as a means to keep their status. They elevate their status, they keep their status. And sadly, you know, like I do see it too in the Asian community. Like obviously I can't talk too much about it because I'm part of certain Asian groups on social media. And I do see some of this, and I don't want to take away from their experience. But because you know, they have their own experience. They are also Asian American. This is also their problem too. Where some of them say they feel like they don't experience racism, they don't see it.
Yeah.
And I say lucky. That's awesome. But they're also in like different kind of like social class as well. When they have money, maybe they're one of the main 3 Asians. I don't know. I don't want to look too much into it. And also there's the other Asian on the other side saying, you know, maybe we deserved it for playing the model minority card for so long.
No one deserves this. Like,
no one does.
That's just you know, whoever thinks anyone would deserve this kind of
this hate. No,
is fucking bonkers, like Amy Den style. Like,
I mean, I don't think we deserve it, but like some of the argument is that we brought it on to ourselves because we are Asians. We kept our own community. We never blended in. We hated blacks and browns.
That's the same kind. It's the same kind of thinking, like, oh, you know, she was drinking too much, she deserved it. You know, what was she wearing when, you know, like,
agreed. It's
she goes like, nobody deserves this. Like, it's just not.
Agreed.
It's not a thing.
Yeah. Well, that also kind of goes back to like racism within the Asian American community, right? And that divide. Dude, I'm gonna share this story where because we were talking about like the history books and stuff. I was in this Uber pool or Lyft line, I forgot what it was. I was going to a bar in Mission. So I lived in the inner Richmond, which is more like lower middle class, upper poor class, or whatever. I live a bunch of like hipsters. So we pick up this one girl, and then we're talking about World War II, and then I mentioned like how more Chinese people died in World War II than Jewish people did. So, and then the girl in the back seat goes, "Well, it's not that bad because they did this themselves." And I didn't know what she was saying, and I was sober at the time. But then, as I got out of the car, I realized that what she meant was, it's not that bad because all Asians are the same and they did it to themselves.
What? Was she mistaking Japanese people for Chinese people? Is that what it was?
It's because like during World War II, more Japanese people they kind of massacred Chinese people. It was awful. And
well, yeah, because the Japanese were trying to, you know, overtake sort of land. They were trying to occupy the same way that the Germans were.
They're imperialistic type of mindset. Yeah,
it was a huge massacre. I mean, I saw some of the videos in my history class. I mean, I almost shed tears. It was fucking crazy. Like they made them jump off of cliffs. But that's beside the point. It's just like when I was talking about because most schools didn't really teach about the Japan takeover of China during World War II. They only talk about the Pacific War. So, but in her mindset, that it basically she saw that Chinese and Japanese are the same race, same culture, same language. So it wasn't a bad incident because they just basically hurt their own selves. And I was like, wow, this girl's crazy.
Wow. Well, she's trying to speculate that's like a civil war within the Asian community, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think what you're trying to say, and I wholeheartedly agree, like education is so important in resolving a lot of this shit, right? Like, because if people don't know what happened in the past, we're only bound to repeat it. Like that is just, you know, history 101. Like, and to really get to that place. I think it's twofold. And Erica, you're a case in point for all this. One, it's education to make sure that everybody knows what the fuck they're talking about, but then also exposure to these other communities directly so that you have that firsthand knowledge of these various perspectives and, you know, the various sort of like experiences that people have had, you know, within their own community. Because like you said, moving to San Francisco completely changed your perspective. You didn't get a great education in Visalia, and you weren't exposed to very many groups outside of, you know, your own.
I don't know. I think the education that I received myself was actually good. I paid attention. I paid attention. One.
Sorry.
One, I'm a smart person. I knew how.
No one is disagreeing with you.
we never questioned that.
No.
My ability to somehow transcribe Wikipedia and Cliff Notes into my own essays, magnificent. It's a work of art. But the thing is, like, I got lucky because I chose the right teachers, and I think this is a conversation This is a different conversation where I talk about how, like, education really relies on the teachers and how much they care about the classroom.
Oh,
I got
1,000%.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I do think you're right. Exposure. I think exposure is a huge thing. Like, if I wasn't exposed to certain things, then I wouldn't want to learn about it. And as long as I don't know about the other side, it's easier for me to hate and commit these biases and prejudices. You know?
Yeah. Good point.
But I gotta ask, what grade did you get on that? Immigrants shouldn't have driver's license. Like, what did you get? What did you ace that?
I mean, I think I got like an A- because I was pretty charismatic. I had a strong diaphragm. I had a strong diaphragm. I got really into making my little board, and I was really good at research, dude. And I think it was just more. The grade wasn't dependent on if your argument was right or wrong. It was dependent on like the swagger you brought to the front of the class, and I swung it hard.
Fair enough. I guess I can't. Yeah, I guess I can't argue with that.
Yeah, it's I guess it's one of the perks of, you know, having a lot of friends in high school, because like you felt you're on top of the world, but high school was a different time. So like education and exposure is very important.
I agree, and I always like because you know we do see people of color who do move to more affluent areas or more white-based areas, and you feel there's a part of them that starts to feel like they're part of that society now, that they kind of that's the reason why they start to kind of side with, not saying white supremacists, but who fall under that spectrum, right? Or who benefit to that.
Who benefit from those structures.
Agreed. And
during wartime, we call them sympathizers.
Yeah, because I definitely see that among people that we may, some of us may know, that they start to empathize, or not, that sympathize with, and saying that why do we keep blaming white people for all this stuff? I made it big.
Yeah.
I don't mean, obviously, I should probably start the podcast with a soundbite. I don't blame white people, you know what I mean? Like, we should say, I mean, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming black people, white people, or anything. I'm just blaming more, or I'm not blaming more, I'm questioning the systems that are put in place.
Institutions that put these in place that make people, I guess, that tend to be white people that benefit out of it.
Yeah, like what role are we playing in this race war 2021?
Change it. Yeah. What can we do to change it? And just to echo, it's not going to say anything, right?
No, you got your chance. I can't wait to tell you that story, by the way.
But yeah, to echo, is that really just starts with education and really starting with our own communities. And that's the reason why, I offline when we were talking about what we were doing, and that's the reason why we have things we got to do in the workplace now, that really start to educate people. And really say, hey, we come from diverse backgrounds. This is the reasons why it benefits the company, and it's an all-around good thing for everyone. That we get that message across, I think that's what we start to try to build upon. And like creating like stuff like what I created at work is the ERGs, employee resource group, kind of help these groups like get elevated, their voices be elevated, and feel like they're a part of the conversation. Now, not where we have these white male dominated companies that just dictate for the rest of the masses. Like when I created an LGBT. I think it starts with that. I think I honestly think that we're finally making some progress in terms of socially around like workplaces, where I guess we don't really talk about that because we were so in college, we were so used to being in these bubbles, right? That we felt like, oh, everyone around me has the same ideas as me. I feel like we're great progress, but when you get to the real world and you're really working in these areas that are predominantly one group of people, you start to realize that, wow, we really haven't really changed that. It's that we have to really take what we learned from college, our experiences, the education we get, to really kind of help push the needle on certain things, right? We have to push the idea that this really benefits everybody. Not this is only one person gets this, but after all, it benefits the company and the country as a whole.
And not just at work. Like I think we got to do it direct with our families. Even I have some family members that just don't get it, and I don't want to say that it's necessarily on us to sort of force that exposure, but I think really even just opening channels to make them know like, hey, there's a space for you to come here and learn more about XYZ, like I think is so important, especially
yes,
because it's very interesting. The generation of myself and like my cousins, my siblings, we're almost all in interracial relationships, for the most part. In my direct generation and like younger, obviously, but my sister's generation and older, like they're not. I think my sister was the first one to sort of really break that ground, and it was to mixed results, literally and figuratively. But I think really saying, hey, you can learn more here, like, or not all white people are like this, not all black people are like that, not all people are like that, like giving them that direct sort of experiences with that, to learn that, I think is so important.
It gives you a more well-rounded perception of life, right?
Absolutely.
Should we watch our language to also include racists or people who we deem is the ones committing the atrocities? That's a hard question, right?
Yeah.
Like, should we also be concerned of their feelings as we're trying to educate them of our feelings? Well,
and I don't know, like we maybe need to clarify, because there is also this new wave of thought, like where if you're not, like what is a racist, right? Yeah. Who is actually racist? And it's even me, like I tend to think that I sort of like lean on the side of activism and being like relatively about certain things, right? And even I don't, I'll say it. but even I still don't understand, like, because there's this idea, like, if you're not actively working to dismantle racism, then you're racist. And I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily like fall in line with that thought. Like, I don't know that you are racist, but you likely benefit from racism, right? Like that's and I think that it's a fine line. And like, so what version of racist are you speaking about? Because like, if you're talking about trying to be inclusive of the people that benefit from racism but aren't necessarily racist, like, yes, I think we should absolutely, frame our language in a way that would also connect with them as well to get them on our side, what I mean? But when it comes to people who are like legit racist,
that is a no-no.
I don't know that I need to police my language for that.
Agreed. But I think, to answer your question, Eric, I think we kind of have to change our language in a way that kind of does, quote unquote, maybe those people who do benefit from racism but are not necessarily racist should be included and feel like if we get those people on board, then we can really attack problems, right? Because we can't do this. It's not this you versus them type of thing. It's us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was just thinking about that because you talked about how you in your company you created that means to elevate those voices.
We all benefit. We all benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like like when you're mixing a track, when you sidechain things, you lower certain volumes to make things louder. And what if you're the bass? Like, what if you didn't want your volume lowered so other volume could be elevated? It's kind of hard. I mean, the personify fucking audio levels, but
that's a good analogy.
Yeah, like sidechaining.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a hard to feel like if you're amplifying someone's voice, am I gonna lose my voice?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like Asian privilege, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Like I've made good success. Maybe not the best success, but I got somewhere. Why do I need to sacrifice that, right? Or have that mentality?
I did it. Why can't you do it?
Yeah. Again, pull yourself on the bootstraps. I got to do it, which is what's the worst things to say against people who.
I hate that phrase. Yeah, like I can't remember who said it, but it's like there's so much rhetoric about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It's all that you need to do. Like blah blah blah. But like there are some people who came to this country or even born in this country who don't have boots.
Correct. So, so we have to acknowledge that some people are at different levels that don't have all the same type of privileges that you have to get you to that point where you can work your ass off just to get to a certain point.
And I will include white people in that as well.
Yes,
agreed. White people in poverty who were born with no shoes, and therefore, like the idea that they should be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps because other people or other groups were able to do that, like to me is just such a fallacy, and it does a disservice to everyone to just sort of assume that like equity isn't part of the conversation.
Yeah, you have to really again go back to how these systems have really put things were put into place that really kind of taking privileges away from certain people that in a race some people already have 10 steps behind the start line already. And I keep on wanting to say, like, by us creating new systems that then protect everyone and making sure that everybody at least has a fair chance, has a fair chance, has a pair of boots to pull the straps up on, doesn't mean that we're going to take away someone else's boots. Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Like, we're not taking, we might take your Manolo Blahniks, but we're not taking your boots, I promise.
Unless you're a racist and you're taking all their privileges away, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like I want your boots, I want your pants, I want your, undies too.
I want your jobs. Take your jobs.
Well, and that's, it's also such an interesting thing, especially when you look at it from the sort of like AAPI lens. People have always tried to say that like Asian communities will come in and they'll, basically lower flash prices on everything, which make it impossible for people to compete. But that's also, sort of what has been done at the macro level when we send all of our manufacturing jobs to China or to other like countries where
cheap labor.
Where we will pay for that cheap labor. And it's like people like to say like, oh, we don't do that. We don't sort of like profit from cheap labor, and we do it. When it comes to sort of Latino communities coming and working in the fields, as our farm workers, because no one else wants to do that work. And then we do it when we export jobs as well. And, the focus doesn't, is always on why are we letting these people undercut us, when it comes to, the prices, instead of looking at like, why are these companies sending these jobs or like, paying such low prices for this labor instead of making sure you're paying for American manufacturing. Prices that it demands, right? Like, or requires, as it were. So
that's a whole different conversation, man.
Capitalism.
But it's rolled into all of this. You know what I mean? That was what
that's systemic institutions that we need to break down to. So
what Trump literally built his China, issue starting from that, right? It was
correct.
And we were allowing China to take advantage of us, by sending all of our money down there for their cheap labor. And that was, again, it was the seed that he planted and gave more space to and sunlight to let it grow into this, that he only escalated even further with what he was calling the coronavirus. So it's like it starts like small, but it just grows and grows and grows and grows.
Like, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm saying it's gonna be hard. And I think that even though we should, try to include sympathizers in this conversation, I think we should just focus on the future, educating the next generation that's coming out. And hopefully in their turn, they will educate the next generation and things will get better.
I think it's important to do both at the same time, because I think part of educating the generations that come after us is challenging the, accepted notions of the elder generations, because and saying maybe you should reframe it or look at it in a different way. It's not saying cool your jets, your way is the wrong way, and don't ever do it that way again. Right. It's more, it's like consider the other side of it and consider this, perspective, because it's something that I'm constantly cognizant of. Like, kids are always watching. They hear everything, they see everything. So if an older generation is going to say, fuck this, fuck these Black people, or fuck these, Vietnamese people, whatever, it's on us to challenge them that in that moment and show exactly, and show our kids that this isn't an okay sort of position to hold, and let's try and figure out why. Let me show you why. Let me show you different reasons why.
I agree. I think we still have to do challenge at the same time, because if we don't challenge those people who always thought that was the only way to go, they're going to keep teaching that to their children and their children, and then it's an endless cycle that we can't break. We're going to keep catching up, and we have to do what our means to educate.
Yeah, and
without attacking them. Yeah,
exactly. And if you just ignore it and sort of be like, oh, they're old, whatever, we don't have to worry about them, that's showing your kids or the younger generations that 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 you're complicit sort of in this.
Good point.
And you don't want that to take hold in them either.
I think you would have to expose them, somehow build a way they have a sort of empathy for the other side, because without that empathy, they're not going to care.
Sure.
They have to care, and that's the hard part. You have to get these old school robot Asian people to care about other people that isn't them. That's hard.
But these are not just older people too. These are people in our generations that have the mentality.
Then
that's why I'm saying it's taught. It's passed down to their children.
Oh yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, when I say old, I think of 25 and older. That's old.
Thanks. I'm turning 31 this month.
I'm 32. I mean, have you had a hangover? Every day. But it's but when I say old, we learned our manners. It's hard for us to change. I'm not saying you can't change, but we learn what we learned, at least by the age of 25. We start growing from there. And like I said, I think you have to expose them to a different community, or try to build a bridge of sympathy or empathy, because the only way to stop hate is to realize the other side is not that much different than yourself.
Yeah, they're definitely not the enemy. They're not the enemy, and they're a lot more probably closer related to your own experience than you think.
Or we jump them. That's all we did in the hood.
Oh no, but I think
we jump them into progressivism.
Because Asian conservatism is a thing.
It is,
yeah.
No, I wouldn't necessarily call it pandering, but I think reminding, people that if other groups get certain advantages, it's not going to take yours away. Again, I go back to this, the rising tide lifts all boats, including yours. So it's a common argument that you see, and people not wanting to raise the minimum wage to $15.
Oh yeah.
Because other, group, a firefighter only makes $15 an hour. And it's because that firefighter is severely underpaid. So if you pay fast food workers and everybody else $50 an hour, then that means that firefighter is going to make more money. Like,
yes,
so
agreed.
it's going to make significantly more money. So
I'm saying everyone gets a piece of the pie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not, and we're not like dealing with a pie that's going to run out. Like,
yes,
that's not
agreed.
the world out.
Agreed.
It's not like this pie is not. It's not a finite amount of pie. There's plenty of pie for everyone to have. Like, it doesn't mean that one has to sort of like hoard it the way that it has been.
Yeah, inflation pie.
My favorite flavor.
Yeah,
those are definitely good points. And then I think a little bit we have to kind of allude to is that some of the privileges that they benefit from are due to minority that have fought for that. I think that they forget that too,
But I mean, I think I would love, to sort of what you were saying earlier, I would love to see the way that, so many people embraced the Black Lives Matter movement, like over the last year, that people do that with the AAPI community as well. I mean, my hope is that we're able to sort of rally around each other the way that we did literally a year ago when everything with George Floyd happened. And again, that synergy of the trial happening right now as all of this is coming to a head is, I think people need to sort of pay attention to that a little bit more. And they're just...
Yeah, I mean, I think just give it some time, like, because, I think Asian people are still processing of what's going on within the community. Because now, with technology and people who are able to speak English and translate for the older generation, you can have these conversations about who we are and where we stand. I'll admit, when Black Lives Matter first came out, I was like, fuck it, dude, all lives matter. I'm not proud of it, but I was coming from a position where I've had bad experience. Like, what about me? Like the stuff, like the way I saw it is like, it's like these things have happened to me, but nobody cared about Asian people, and that was the mentality I had until I had to give it some time, process the feelings, and realize that, hey, you know what? Once we are able to process these feelings, then we can start seeing things more clearly.
Agreed.
Yeah. Objectively, yeah.
Yeah, because it's just to realize that we're all in this together. Because it's kind of, I guess, what kind of maybe for something that was branding, it could have been like really put the focus on like Black Lives Matter too. I think for the longest time, people just thought that it was elevating everybody else. Because when one thing needs to be focused on, we put all our focus on one thing because that's getting not the attention it's ever had.
Yeah, I like to use that the house on fire analogy.
Yes, yeah, same here.
It's, yes, all houses matter, but this one is on fire right now.
Yeah.
And so let's focus our attention. And this is what I think, the pandemic's really shown is that what happened is one house caught another house on fire. And we have to be able to sort of like address both and have be able to put those both out. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can put out both of these fires.
What was it that I saw on that group? It was like we're allowed to have two different conversations about oppression at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's good. Like finally, Asian Americans are addressing the problems within our own community and with other communities.
Yeah. And I think something else that I've just been hyper aware of recently is, like I said, I really hope that we're able to sort of rally the way that we did before. But at the same time, I have to recognize that because we are still in this moment of processing everything, we don't have necessarily the same tools that have been built over the last, like I said, 6 years that were built for Black Lives Matter, and like being able to sort of like, here are all of the education materials. Here's the way that you can sort of handle all of this. Like, I personally I'm not sort of like keenly aware of the same kind of information or data dump that could be available for the AAPI community. And I would love to see more of that become available and easily accessible so that people can, you know, be able to be allies, you know, and in the same way that we have been able for the Black community. Because I have seen a lot of people, specifically like my Asian American friends, who feel deep pain and hurt that they haven't been getting the same kind of, I don't want to say recognition, but like acknowledgement, you know, right now as other groups have in the past. And I just like I hear you. You know, I don't know how to be more vocal just yet in support, but I'm there. Like, you know, show me the way and I will be there.
Agreed. Yeah.
And like I said, like, we don't want that to be a rhetoric weaponizing Asian lives matter. I mean, that's not a freaking thing. I don't know why I said it, but in a hypothetical sense, you don't want it to be weaponized Asian lives matter versus or over Black lives matter.
No. I'm not saying that at all. I think it's more like
we gotta be careful. No. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because
absolutely. I think what I'm trying to say is more of like most of the people that I've seen speak out about what's happening right now at the AAPI community have been mostly people in the AAPI community. Like people outside of the AAPI community has been like, it's really, you know, people with direct connections, you know, like family, friends.
Community, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Like I haven't seen the same kind of
synergy, like I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and I
agree.
Again, I attributed that to Black Lives Matter as an organization. Took 6 years for it to sort of like really pick up the pace and fully be embraced by, you know, what felt like the world at large, right? Whereas I still feel like to a degree, there are people who still need to be convinced that what's happening to the AAPI community is more of an issue than people are taking it, you know? Not to say that like, you know, Black people got more credit than, no, absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that I feel like, you know, people haven't been paying attention to this as much. And I think part of it is we're processing. We're trying to see like what's happening. Where is this going? Like, I guess the way that I framed it in my head is that like, so with George Floyd, we saw him die for 9.5 minutes, right? We're seeing over the course of the last year, like just little clips that
one video equivalent to that video. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I get it.
We're not at the full 9.5 minutes. Yeah. We're not at the full 9.5 minutes yet. Right. Like, and so I think that's why there's a lot of people who haven't fully, you know, understood what kind of crisis is built.
Like to go. Sorry.
With Black Lives Matter, there was a face to the enemy. I'm not saying that cops are enemies, but there was a system that you guys, there was a system that you guys knew where to vent your anger to, or like what's the challenge.
Yeah, true. There's a rallying cry, yeah.
And the hard part is like, you can't really do that with the whole the Asian hate crimes, because right now the rhetoric is being pushed is that it's Black people doing it. That's why you see a lot of Asian people who hate Black people. I don't hate Black people. I have Black friends, you know. That's my one callback. Anyways, but then it's hard to like really say like, are we gonna attack Black people now? You know, like what are we gonna do? You know, it's like who we're gonna attack. But then a white person attacked another Asian person. Are we gonna attack white people? Are we gonna attack all white people? Is it
it's true.
People? It's not gentrification. Yeah. Like who are we going after? It's hard. You know, it's
all the culmination of these microaggressions that have culminated throughout the years that we have to address and stop. Right.
Different cultures, different language. We're just organizing now. Sorry, Jerome, go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, how are we gonna how are we gonna encompass all of that? It's something so vast, and I think that's what we're struggling right now. And to really unify the AAPI community in a nutshell too is already hard in itself. And to unify a message that addresses all these culmination events that's happened it's a hard thing to try to broadcast. And there's still a lot of people. Like I made a statement at work about standing with the API community, and that we reject all forms of hate. I got actually a few emails from people, and this is from the LGBTQ group, which is also a marginalized community, and said, why should, like, how do we know everything is a hate crime, blah blah? All the media does portray is just people stealing stuff, and it tends to be Black folks doing this, and so it's a lot of that, right? That we're trying to handle and digest. Tell people that when marginalized communities speak, we gotta trust what they say, right? And it's we have to keep. It's sad when we have to combat that mentality. I think that's what makes it hard.
A lot of people have seen Asian Americans as the model minority. They made it.
Always goes back to that. Yeah,
and they made it. Like, why do we have to care about them? They're white-ish.
That structure. That's all structures.
Yeah, like why do we have to care? They made it. They're above us. So why do you have to care about them? We just care about the people below us.
Yeah. Well, I'm of the mindset that, again, we should care about. I'm not the all lives matter person, but I think, you know, when it comes to sort of like issues like these where you see a community in crisis, you know, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, to be able to address, you know, these various sort of things together.
Just thought of a fucking reference. It's like we're like the Americans. We don't know who our allies and we don't know who Charlie is. You know, it's like fucking. But it's true. Like I say, we don't know who the allies are. We don't know who is part of the Asian American community yet. It's like it's hard to pass information.
Yeah,
and it's hard to not exclude another group of people, because I know a lot of LGBTQ plus don't like the Asian community because we fucking Asian people. Well, I mean, not all Asian people, but they're in Asian culture. Gay is that cool? Like the Philippines.
Of course, very very religious based country that really does defile against that.
Super conservative.
That could again be applied to so many minority groups.
Agreed. Very not unique. Yeah.
Going back to the one post I saw in that group saying, "Hey, like we brought it to ourselves, right?" And until the Asian community can unify under, I want to say one banner, but unify or find a common ground.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's when things will probably get organized more as a group and information can be passed.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
No, that's true. I mean, I think that could also be another reason why it's sort of difficult right now for people to rally, because, you know, we don't want to be rallying behind, you know, unclear messaging. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It needs to be, you know, I'm not saying it has to fit on a hat, but like, you know, it really, you know, knowing exactly what the goal is and how to sort of like get there, like in an organized way is really key to sort of, you know, that grassroots mentality.
It's like, you know, like, you gotta combat, because, you know, like, I know a lot of Chinese people who still hate Japanese people, you know, and there's still other groups of Asian people who hate other groups of Asian people, or they have like that kind of microaggressions too.
Yeah.
So once we start ironing those out, you know, then we move on to the next step.
Well, you guys finish, you know, send me the memo once you finish writing.
Like, hey, you know, let's make sure nobody gets punched in the face. That should be the memo.
Or curb stomps. Like, what's
dude,
that
lady got a hella curb stomp, dude.
Oh, I know. It's so horrific.
Yeah. And, you know, actually, I was thinking about that video, and, you know, I was like, I was initially upset too at the security guard and the FedEx guy, right? And I started thinking about it, I was like, you know, like, obviously I would step in because fucking old lady, 1, 2, she looks like my grandma, you know, but it's like the victim's family member said, remember who committed this crime. Let's not stray away from who
didn't do anything, right? Yeah.
Who's the accuser, you know, like, like, you should have done something. Hell yeah, it was an old lady. Like, why wouldn't you do anything? But like, it's hard after a process of feelings. And, like, we shouldn't like chastise them or punish them.
And they actually came out. There was a longer video that actually showed. So they only closed the door while he was still right there because they were actually afraid for some of the residents that were in the building.
Yeah.
But as soon as that guy walked away, they immediately like ran out and like, they were the ones that called 911. They were the ones that helped her. And, I think one of the things that maybe we can do as allies is, really look into bystander training. That's what I've seen a few of my friends do, because they're like, there has to be a way to intervene in a safe way. We just haven't figured out how to do that because, of course, like, I don't think that I could have intervened, with this big black guy who clearly murdered his mother, and
that was so crazy, but nobody knew about that part too.
I guess that part wasn't clear. Yeah. But like, if I had intervened, to try and help this old lady, there's no telling what he would have done to me.
But then, that also brings up another question: like, how, like, when is it enough? Like, when do you think that there will ever be a time when Asian Americans are gonna be like, fuck it, we're done with this peaceful stuff, we're gonna start shooting people?
Should never have to get to that point,
I just think violence,
Yeah, we should never have to get to that point.
Yeah, violence and turn of violence, it only makes the problem worse. It doesn't improve it. Like I do think self-defense is important. Absolutely, 1,000%. But there have to be, ways, and maybe I'm not the best person to speak to them, obviously, but like there have to be ways where we can, I don't know, maybe I should talk to like a wrestler who knows how to get out of certain moves and be able to sort of like maneuver themselves. Because basically, they'll sort of choke people out in very non-violent ways and safe ways so that they just like lose consciousness and, are able to sort of like extricate themselves from certain situations. So it's like, I don't know if that's, the line of self-defense that I'm a little bit more aligned with than getting a gun. Yeah. I just feel like guns just make things worse. They don't necessarily make things better.
Yeah, I mean, there's arguments for and against that. Guns are dangerous, I'm not gonna lie. And the things that the Asians with attitude, I think what they're doing is great. They're patrolling the streets, they're volunteering their time.
Like communal policing or something like that, or which kind of we've talked about
volunteering. I don't know if policing is the right way. Oh
yeah, but it's tough because
someone's trying to join.
That's
super late.
Who is
my buddy?
Oh, a new person.
Yeah, I think
round two.
I think he was at the Asian protest in Oakland, so I went
okay.
But I think policing might be a dangerous way to put it because, like,
Yeah, that phrasing itself, it's already it's kind of bad. But I don't know. It's tough because I agree with Christina. I think we introduce more violence. I think it's counterproductive. Escalate to something more. What we have to do is we have to put programs in place. I guess I don't know. Tackle this. It's a tough question to answer. Like me and Eric had this conversation before that we do know people in the Asian community that are going to start arming themselves and believe the means of we just got to defend ourselves. But I agree that everyone should be able to defend themselves, but maybe not to that means.
Yeah. I know it's a hard question, like because obviously
there's gonna be helpless. There's always gonna be someone helpless, and I don't think it's in our cards to try to get older folks to learn how to fight.
Yeah, I mean that was my first thought when I saw the violence. Was like, we gotta fucking arm up. Hey, Erin, what's up? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?
What's up? Were you at the rally?
Yeah, I was at the rally.
Oh, guys, this is my buddy Erin.
Hi, Erin.
Xtina, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. My bad, I'm in the car, so I can't really. Yeah.
No worries.
No worries.
But the rally was great, though. It was like every speech was so fucking powerful, man.
Okay.
Like I recorded one. I'm gonna send it to you.
Nice, nice.
But yeah, it was a lot of people showed up and like they literally, you know what I mean? Like, you know, every aspect of what's going on and the awareness. It's just like, it's just, I mean, we all know this shit gotta stop, bro. Like for real, like, you know, because it's like, it's not just like we can't look at it as just like, you know, the Asian elders. They're all our elders. You know what I'm saying? They're all our elders. So we have to fucking like play our parts. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know. My thing is that we're all, I mean, I know we have different colors and all that, but when it's all said and done, we're all human beings. You know what I mean? So when, you know, so it's like, there's no excuse not to show support. You know what I mean? Like, even when when the attacks were already happening, you know, like, it shouldn't take 8 people to get killed for people to start trying to pay attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, it should, I mean, it's already been happening and people wanted to not, like, really, you know, I mean, people, I mean, let's be real. Like, when it first started happening, people weren't really paying attention or just like, but then something, you know, then a literal terrorist attack, a racist terrorist attack had to happen and then people want to show face. But like this was a very beautiful event and it's only going to get bigger from here on out. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, I feel like the most important thing right now is to lead an example for the next generation so that hate doesn't continue.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I feel like that's the most important thing. Like, just push unity. You know what I'm saying? That's it. Push unity. And anything other than unity is hate. It's that simple. And I feel like the people who have their head up their asses with, you know, the issues with race or anything like that, you know, if they love their kids, if they really love their offspring or the next generation, but they wouldn't put hate in their hearts. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So let's first of all, we gotta stop the violence. We need more faces. We need more people showing up. You know, we need more people patrolling the streets, protecting the elders, protecting, you know, I mean, we all got to play our part. That's just it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Shit is real right now. And it's to really like go against the grain and we all play our part. And that's it. But yeah, I was really happy to attend it and just see it. Just, you know, it's a beautiful situation. You know, people coming together for a great cause, and we need to continue, and that's it. Like that's
empowering. Yeah.
And I think we really also need to sort of figure out how to amplify probably events that are like happening in the areas. Yeah. I don't see that happening in LA, like sort of in the same way it's probably happening in other places, and it's just how, again, we were talking about this earlier, like how I want to be a good ally, like tell me what to do. Like it's because it's like there are other sort of movements. Really not doing that. But there's been other movements that I've been able to participate in because they've had sort of like a really long time to sort of gestate and get their, you know, message out like in very sort of loud and vocal ways. And it's because right now people are still processing what's happening to the Asian community. People are still like trying to figure out like how this is happening, what the fuck is happening, and really, again, who is to blame for this, and how can we actually, like, you know, put into motion? Yeah,
put teeth in it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So Erin, during the rally, does it feel like we have put a face on the hate? Like, are we like attacking or blaming an idea, or blaming the patriarchal, the systematic things that have been put in place? Like, have they addressed like what we should challenge?
Like the source, like something like the source of the hate.
Yeah, the source of the hate.
Or like a rally cry, or
like we gotta stop.
I mean,
getting punched in the face. You know, like what's the rally cry?
Yeah.
More so, the rally cry is just like the government in place, the powers that be don't give a fuck about the people. And it's more so that people need to come together. You know what I'm saying? Because the powers that be was pushing hatred. I mean, we had I mean, let's keep it real. Like, we had a president who fucking said China virus repeatedly and said Kung flu and had the whole crowd laughing in America. And, you know, in the majority, I can't say the majority of America, but it was on national TV on a national level, and people just accepted that shit. You know what I'm saying? Even at the time, I felt like, yo, this is a really big problem. This guy said something absolutely racist on there, and it wasn't pushed hard enough. He wasn't attacked hard enough for his racist comment. You know what I'm saying? And I knew it was going to turn to something bigger. I mean, look, dude, bro, I kid you not. I remember I posted something about this on Facebook like last year when, like, right after he said the Kung Flu things, I saw it live. That this happened to be on. I saw him say that shit, and I was like, man, the president said fucking Kung Flu on national TV. He's a rotten piece of shit. Everybody hate Trump with it. You know the whole shit, right? Like another angry post about Trump, like the rest of the world, right? But when I wrote that shit, I mean, some people were mad, but some people just like, it was like people didn't really pay attention to it. And I even had a friend comment on it. I'm not going to say nobody's name, but I even had a friend comment on it or whatever, saying, I can't even front with you. I mean, that shit was kind of funny. It was, I mean, I can't really, it was low-key funny, right? Or not. But the person who said that was Asian. And I'm just like, facepalm, like, yo, I don't think you get the bigger picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and now look at what's happening now.
It's like what we were talking about earlier, where it could be part of the Asian privilege, where we've seen, you probably see that he's made it so far where it doesn't affect him because he's past that.
Yeah.
You know, could be. I don't know who this person, whatever. Did you what kind of people did you see over there, Erin? Did you see a lot of mixed race?
Yeah, it was a lot of different race. Like I seen black people, white people, a lot of different Asians. I also been enlightened on like a lot of discrimination within the Asian community.
Yes.
And I didn't know that. Like I didn't know about the whole issue between Southeast Asians and East Asians. And I didn't realize that shit. I didn't realize how deep it was. They were talking about experiences they had, and I was like, shit. I had this experience as a black person with other Asians. I didn't know that there were Asians that face that same type of discrimination with other Asians. So they were also pushing a narrative of all Asian races coming together as well. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know how deep rooted their issues were. But the fact that they all came together for this was beautiful. You know what I mean? But I've seen a lot of different races in there, and people were just showing solidarity and unity. You know? So I was happy with everything that came out of that event.
That's good, dude. I'm glad that they touched on that subject about the Asian crimes or Asian racism within the community, because that's a huge thing that nobody really talks about.
No one does, yeah. You know, push the envelope of saying that the lighter skin for Asian people also was your class. And you know, growing up from myself, my mom used to give me this soap. It was papaya soap to try to lighten my skin to not show that I have a darker skin tone because I am Filipino American. And yeah, that in itself is it's like so sub-rooted that you feel that it's engraved that you didn't think of any of it growing up, but it really does. It's transpiring to things like this. So why there's such division in the Asian community.
Did they talk about that, Erin? Like of like the embedded history of racism with Asian communities and African Americans or blacks?
Like they also spoke up and spoke about like the African American and what we go through and the other communities and what we go through and how we all should get together. You know what I mean? Because it's a struggle on all sides. You know, and that's true. Like I mean, it sounds grim, but it's the truth that like if you're a minority in America, like your safety, respect, and well-being is not guaranteed. That's just what it is. I mean, we're a country that was built on hatred. We live on private property. Do you expect anything positive to come out of that shit? Let's just be real. Nope. So like now it's showing. And now it's really showing for what it is, and the world gets to see America for what it is. But at the same time, with all the deep-rooted bullshit that's been happening, there's still room to move in a positive direction.
Yes.
But it's a process. That's just what it is. There's one thing I also want to mention that's also really important is to also like, this is the fetishization of Asian women. Because they really talked about that. They had the woman had this one girl. She had oh my gosh, she had this really passionate, deep speech about her experiences, and this fucking just oh shit, man, that's a very thing. The fetishization with Asian women and the sexual harassment and the disrespect and just and the thing about it is that shit is learned. That shit's in our media. You know what I mean? That shit's on our media. The fucking me so horny, love you long time type shit.
Yeah.
I mean, they put that in fucking songs. You know what I'm saying? There's hit records with that shit. You know what I'm saying? That's just an example. But still, it's we have to look at stuff like that. We have to look at the stuff that we feed, the media, the content that we feed ourselves or whatnot, and understand what type of shit, what kind of message does this really portray? You know what I'm saying? And there's people who have such, personal, dark, deep experiences, and a lot of these things can be triggering for them,
Mm-hmm.
And like you said about and also, with the Asian community, how they were the older generation, tell them not to speak up and try to blend in and that, they didn't get a chance to really speak out the way they should have had. But I know they have a lot of deep rooted feelings because they were silent and put up with so much shit. You know what I'm saying? And it's and now America's starting to see the pain that they go through, and there's a lot of awareness that we need to have.
Mm-hmm.
We all need to be educated and, and educate the youth and move forward in a positive direction so we can finally have some peace, but first things first, the tax need to fucking stop. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Damn.
Well,
I kind of wish we talked about that more. We actually didn't even touch on that of the over sexualization of Asian women.
Yeah.
And the emasculation of Asian males.
Man, yep, that's another one.
They're literally two sides of
the same coin.
Yeah. But I feel dude, there's just so much to unpack in with this thing that's going on. We didn't even think about touching that yet because fucking shit's going down, man. I don't know.
We were talking a lot about a lot of different things. We were talking historical context, but
correct.
When you talk about sort of the sexual nature of making, and I see it happen with various groups. I think it's most pronounced with Asian groups where you can make it a sexual preference where I prefer Asian women, but I do not prefer Asian men, right? That is it's so constant. Whereas preferring, you can prefer or not prefer black men or black women. There are people that sort of fetishize both, right? Whereas it's very consistent. You people fuck with Asian women, but they don't fuck with Asian men, and there isn't the same kind of sort of.
You talking about
quality there,
a bisexual person? They're talking about
no. I mean, so when men just in general say I fuck with Asian women, and then women just in general say I don't fuck with Asian men. Whereas you could find women say I fuck with both. I do fuck with black men, or I fuck with black women. Yeah. So it's about turning these things into preferences as opposed to calling them out for what they are, which is
it's fetishization
and ultimately racism.
Which is very big and also in the LGBTQ community, the fetishizing of Asian men to feel that they're submissive and stuff like that. So that's one of the things.
Really?
Yeah. That they're feminized.
Feminized that they must fit in this framework. Being a gay Asian man, I had identity crisis because I didn't fit in that construct. Being has to be the skinny, hairless, I guess, Asian bottom that
or the twink, right?
Did it make you feel less gay?
Yeah, I honestly did too, because I felt like I couldn't gravitate to a certain identity because I didn't fit in one of those constructs. Yeah, and which was am I at that? Or what am I? What am I? It's just not just with Asian men too, because there's also fetishizing of black men, and for that, so there's a lot of that stuff we have to tear down. And I agree, we have to call those things out. They may be considered as preferences, but not really. They're fetishizations.
Yeah. Do you have any advice on gay Asian males such as yourself who might feel that way about not fitting in the box?
It's tough because in the LGBT community, I think there's a lot of things we have to tear down. There's a lot of these like certain buckets that put people in, and you have to really just own up in who you are, and that's what I think I think it really has to come with the kind of self-love, right? You really have to have that identity, that feel that whoever you are, that this is what the person you're gonna love, and how is someone not gonna love you if you can't like yourself because you don't feel like you're identifying with something. Fuck that, like identify who you are, and then and someone will love you for that. So that's my only advice for some people. Break that social construct.
Mm. Yeah. And Erin, did these women give any examples of how we should combat this idea of over-sexualizing Asian females?
I'm trying to remember. This is all fresh. All I can say is that, like, I mean, first of all, we can't just be fetishizing Asian women, period. Period. And she gave so many examples and so many personal examples. You know what I mean? How can I say? Because she was really talking about personal experiences, and it was fucking deep. So I was, I didn't really, off the bat, I can't remember every detail of the speech. I mean, when like giving an example, like, trying to give like how to combat it, but it was more so in the sense to stop fetishizing Asian women, and then also relating to attacks. The shooting at the spas.
Yeah.
That shooting at the spas, but it's just that when it's all said and done, man, it was you just gotta just fetishization. I mean, it's racial fetishization. It's a form of racism.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it.
Definitely.
It's a form of racism, and her examples was showing how damaging it is. You know what I mean? And the things that it pushed people to do. I mean, not just the shootings, but other things that are terribly fucked up. And she had a lot of people come up who are victims of these things. And you'd be surprised how many people in the crowd were victims of these things. And you'd be surprised how young some of the victims are. Like, I saw a 13-year-old girl crying her fucking face off. Like, she's like only 13. But she wasn't crying as if she was shocked by what she heard. She was crying as if she probably experienced those things herself. You know what I mean? That's fucked up.
Mm.
That's fucked up. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, just like they're down to the bare minimum. I mean, they're not down to just the meat of the situation, just the basics of what of all this really about. It's just that, it's just, just like you said, the way we fed races, like different races and shit, it just all has to stop because it's truly damaging and it creates tragic situations that either ends people's lives or just ruins their lives, either mentally or like just, from a mental health standpoint, or you get the point, you know what I mean?
Mm.
But yeah, just so much fucking work needs to be done, yo.
Yeah.
Shit,
Yeah.
that's it. But here's the thing though. I'm just glad people are starting to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We all gotta start somewhere and it's starting to grow. You know what I mean? So it's
I mean, I think one place that we can start with, on trying to sort of fix the fetishization problem is that we have to have more honest conversations about, healthy perceptions and views of sex just in general, because I think that that's also sort of like the starting and breeding ground for incel culture just in general, because they believe that women owe them something, right, in some capacity. And it's because of these constant images that they're bombarded with, that like if you're a nice guy, that women should just generally be throwing themselves at your feet in general. And, you know, with Asian women in particular, like it becomes this safe, exotic space for them, for, you know, men to live in, because of, I think it's also related to the model minority scenario, where it's like, you know, they're exotic enough, you know, they're not too exotic, but they're, you know,
like they don't look like Spanish people or Latin people or white people. They look different enough that they're
because Latina women are fiery and have their own, like, you might have to fight with them because
that quote of being submissive, right?
Exactly. There's this submissive scenario where they will just sort of fall in line. They won't say anything. They'll do everything you ask them to.
Yeah.
And they're exotic enough that it's safe for, you know, their friends and families to accept, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about teaching men or showing men that, like, we have to have healthier ways of engaging with sex and the opposite sex, as it were, or the same sex, like, to know that, like, these are healthy boundaries versus these are not healthy.
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say respect other people's boundaries. No means no. You know, you're not the guy from Gone to Win for his name, but I know we're 3 hours in. Sucks because you just joined us, Erin. I wish you could have been here.
Yeah, my bad. I just seen your message like a few minutes ago with the invite. I was.
You're fighting the good fight. Nobody can hate you for that.
Your fight is important too.
He was doing the field because, like, he was doing the field research. I told him we talked about the field research. Right? Yeah.
The news broadcast. Yeah.
The news broadcast. Yeah. We were Erin Coleman.
Man. But I know I just want to mention LA. There's a group called AWA, Asians with Attitudes, and they're growing throughout the country, and they have a chapter in LA. And some of them were up here for the some of them up here, but that's like the main group fighting for Asian rights right now. That's like the main represent. That's the main. They're the Black Lives Matter of the Asian community right now.
Got it. Okay.
AWA. They're doing some they're making moves right now. And they're patrolling the street, like they're literally patrolling the areas. You know what I'm saying, where attacks are happening. So, and they have chapters that's growing around the country. So and that's for this event. They were the ones who organized it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and the people who started Stop Asian Hate was there too. The Stop Asian Hate movement, they were there too. They came in.
So
yeah.
AWA, I believe, started in New York, right? And then they blew up to Oakland.
I think in Oakland.
Was it Oakland?
I think, you know what? I don't have my facts straight. I don't want to represent the group. So let's just, they either start in California or New York. You know?
Yeah. Eric, you can drop that fact in.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. So final thoughts, final goodbyes?
Final thoughts, I would say unity. We got to focus on unity, protect our elders and protect the woman. Protect everybody, of course. But I'm just saying, like, we really gotta, oh, what happened to my phone? Sorry. But yeah, we really gotta really focus on protecting the elders and protecting the women. You know what I mean? Because, you already know, you know what I'm saying? And just peace, love, unity, respect. Let's all come together and let's all show face and, push forward. Push forward in positivity. No more hate. That's it. Stop the hate. That's all I have to say.
I concur. And also, just to sort of go back to what we were saying before, like, education, educate,
yes.
And also really just embrace different perspectives, like really sort of bring those into your life and consider them, be considerate of them, love them. That's mine.
I agree with everyone what they're saying. I think we what can really make a difference is really starting with our own communities. Start with what's most near to you, your families, your way to educate people, your current workplace. If we can start with there and really kind of bridge these gaps, really kind of find that common ground that really what unites us, is what's really going to push us to move and do good things and get out of this. Because we have to do something, because we can't keep going with the social status right now, because it ain't working.
Yeah. Status quo has got to go.
Yep,
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's maybe good for the few. It's not good for the many.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess ditto. It's like I said, education, compassion, empathy. At least try to walk in their shoes before you pass judgment. Anyways, walk in their shoes, fucking have empathy and compassion. That is all I can really say. And stop punching people in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop that.
All right. And then goodbye, everyone. Recording at the end.